So we're here from the Modern Language Centre from the University of Granada in Spain, and we just want to talk a little bit about our project, trying to integrate, it's very similar to the previous presentation, trying to integrate mediation into our proficiency exams. I'll be taking you through the procedure that we've developed to create authentic real-life tasks, and then I will be passing you over to my colleague Adolfo, who will specifically talk about a task that we developed for present times, for COVID times, based on our experience teaching at the moment. Our context, we produce Cert ACLIS accreditation exams. We do 3 administrations a year, and we had 1 administration cancelled due to COVID. Our exams are CEFR related. The majority of test takers are between 18 and 25, and they take the exam mainly for mobility programs and degree accreditation. We produce exams for both Spanish and English, and our students very much use the language as a lingua franca. And so we will be talking about intra-linguistic mediation. Very much in the spirit of the companion volume, it's an attempt to expand the test construct, to introduce authentic real-life tasks, and to obviously to plan for positive washback. We understand mediation as a mode of communication. It can be written or spoken. It's a social activity, which is extremely context specific, and the mediator acts as an intermediary to overcome some kind of impediment to understanding in order to make communication possible. And a needs analysis was carried out because we were interested to know what our students thought. Did they think they were using mediation in their daily lives? And these were the results for each of the descriptors for using these descriptors either often or sometimes. And so it can be seen that for our students, mediation is relevant. They do use mediation in their daily lives. We looked to evidence-centered design to design our tasks. This gives us a framework. It gives us a systematic approach to designing performance tasks. And we looked at the first 2 layers, domain analysis and domain modeling. And in this way, it allows us to build a chain of reasoning to link evidence to the claims we want to make about test takers. And so these first 2 layers, domain modeling and domain analysis, they've been called the thinking stage of ECD. What exactly are the KSAs, the knowledge, skills and abilities that we want our students to have? We need a good definition of our construct. The evidence, what will we accept as evidence that the students has these KSAs, and what tasks will elicit a performance to give us the desired evidence? So what we did, we looked to the CV, and the authors of the CV have done a fantastic job. We've given a very rich description of the construct of the different KSAs that are involved in mediation. And so the job has been done for us. The literature review is extensive, it's there. The big picture claims in the CV concern mediating a text, mediating communication, and mediating concepts. In our particular context, we decided to first of all look at the area of mediating communication. In our context, as a lingua franca use, we felt that mediating communication would be useful for our students. And again, they were given 3 areas under mediating communication. For the first task that we developed, we chose the 3rd one. Facilitating communication in delicate situations and disagreements. And we decided to do a written response for this at B2 level. And we're given many important KSAs for mediating communication. I think I'm right in thinking that these were mainly developed for spoken communication, spoken mediating communication. And so we also thought it would be interesting to see if we could use these KSAs in a written response. Domain modelling, where the B2 claim for this particular domain, the CEFR, the companion volume, gives these can-dos. And these are the claims that we're making about a B2 test taker. And obviously, if we're going to make these claims, we need evidence to support the claims that we're going to make. And so we looked at the descriptors, we looked at the KSAs that were given in the companion volume, and we drew up a list of what we believed were the important KSAs, the subclaims, if you like, and we prioritized them. We prioritized this list, and this is the list of KSAs that we came up with. We then had to look at the task model. So we needed a task to elicit the data to provide this evidence. So we needed to identify potential work products, what features would be included in the task. And obviously multiple models are possible, and we would expect this. For different areas of mediation, we would have different task models. So the first model, to look to the domain, the CV actually gives us examples of domains in personal, public, occupational and educational. And we're given examples here for B2, for facilitating communication in delicate situations. And we use the example here, number 2, in the personal domain, disputes with landlords and tenants. We felt this was relevant to our students, to our context, and specifically the context, we decided it would be a university Erasmus flat share, and the situation was a disagreement, misunderstanding over payment. So the first task was developed, the first version of the task, and just a brief description of this task. The candidate receives a series of SMS messages from a flatmate about a broken water heater that the landlord refuses to pay for, as well as an email from the landlord threatening eviction. And the candidate is instructed to write to both parties in order to help resolve the conflict. So the first task we took, and we did a series of small-scale piloting. These studies can be seen in more detail. These studies are written up in the collated papers that have just been mentioned for the 7th ALTI conference in Madrid that was cancelled. And so more details about this study can be seen there. But basically, we first went to our first focus group, and there are a few comments here that were made. But basically, they didn't like the task. They felt that it wasn't very authentic. They wouldn't have written to both parties at the same time. And also, there was a very strong bias in favour of the flatmate. The task wasn't working, so we had to go back to the task. So we went back to the task and we made some changes. We changed it to only writing to one party, which was going to be the landlord. And we also put in extra information which would try to reduce the bias in favour of the flatmate. The task was then taken to the second focus group, and we got a much better response. People thought that it was an authentic task and they liked the task. We then piloted the task with a small group of students, n equals 7, and we carried out think alouds at the macro planning stage. And the salient themes which came out of the think alouds in this order were the role of the mediator, positioning, drawing on prior knowledge, and number 4 isn't, it's not completed. That should say additional justifications and explanations. And so we can see that the task does seem to be working. They were thinking of them, so the students were thinking of themselves in the role of the mediator, and they were thinking about how they could mediate the situation. So we then took the task and piloted it with a larger group of students, n equals 24, and we examined the scripts for observable evidence and compared this to our list of KSAs. The KSAs that written in red here, they're extra ones that we added, which were observed in the scripts, in the written scripts, and we felt they were pertinent to the successful completion of the task. And you can see the results. To a greater or lesser extent, the task did elicit the KSAs that we were hoping it would. And so now our next step is to develop the assessment scales. And we really feel that we want to give these important KSAs priority when we do this, when we develop the scales. And so we have one task shell for one situation. We have a procedure now set in place, and we can look to developing other task shells. I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague Adolfo, who will be talking about a specific spoken mediation task which was developed for present times. It was developed based on our experience teaching for the COVID situation. Thank you very much, Adolfo.
Hi, hello. Thank you, Caroline. I hope you all can hear me. Can you hear me right? Yes, okay. So hi to everyone on the other side of the screen. Yes, now go on to next slide, please, Caroline, to analyze the impact that COVID has had in our task construction process. We wanted to develop new tasks, spoken tasks, and our test takers being mainly university students, as Caroline mentioned before, we paid close attention to how the situation at the University of Granada has changed due to COVID. And we saw many changes. Obviously, there's been an increase in online interaction among the students, an increase in hybrid instruction, remote learning, synchronous teaching, which has been many times recorded for students to be able to watch the lessons later on, and also an increase in multimodal input. So bearing all these in mind, we came up with a new oral mediation task, reading and listening to speaking. We focused on 3 scales, the B1 relaying specific information, and then 2 strategies scales, adapting languages and streamlining a text. We wanted to develop a task dealing with mediating a text, not so much mediating communication as the one presented before by Caroline. And the context for the mediation, which is very important for mediation tasks, as you know, is that the mediator is a university student who is mediating for a classmate with a low level of L2 proficiency, who has problems understanding some bits of information from the lesson recorded, and they ask for help. So the test taker receives 2 inputs, a clip of the recorded lesson and a syllabus excerpt shown in that recording, and then the output required is an audio message sent to the classmate. Here's the instructions in Spanish because the task was first developed for the Spanish text, but from the translation in English, here you go. You can see that the test taker receives an email from the classmate explaining the situation, thanking in advance for helping them explain the situation, asking for clarification on what they have understood from the recording, on assessment criteria of the course in this case. And then also the audio input, which is the clip of the recorded session. So next, and then the instructions, the test taker is instructed to watch the clip of the online lesson and record the audio message for the classmate, 2 minutes long. They are given 3 main hints to do the task. First, of course, the mediation task itself to clarify the information requested by the classmates, and then 2 clues on the type of strategies they may use. They have to bear in mind what the classmate has already understood and contrast that with the actual information, and then to adapt the explanation to the classmate's level of proficiency. I forgot to mention that the task, of course, is now being piloted with group focus and think aloud, the same process that Caroline mentioned for the written task, and we plan on coming up with a task shell for these spoken tasks. So as our final remarks, we would like to highlight the fact that mediation poses severe challenges. It does to language testing. We are aware of that, but at the same time, it gives great opportunities to shift the focus from assessment to teaching and learning, as the companion volume says. And we think that we can achieve this by means of the washback effect via assessment, because if we include mediation tasks in our exams, we will have teachers teaching to the construct and learners learning to the construct. So there will be a focus on teaching too and learning. Mediation is very complex, it's multifaceted, it's a pedagogical construct that may be difficult to integrate in teaching and assessing, but at the same time, it gives the opportunity to move towards a more integrated view on assessment, from skills to modes of communication. And the two tasks that we showed are proof of this integration of skills. Also, we've seen that mediation allows us to cope with ever-changing circumstances, as the one we presented, and the impact that COVID had in the university life of our students, and then this is reflected in our tasks. So mediation allows room for adjusting tasks to real life situations and requirements. And also, we think that mediation gives us the opportunity to bear in mind some issues that sometimes have been neglected in language testing, such as the role of the students' L1 or the L2s that students may have to really implement the view of the test taker as a social agent. Also, the plurilingual competence, if cross-linguistic mediation is included in the exams, and also the integration of language and content. And that's pretty much it. We thank you for listening.